more trees, planting more trees, I should say, doesn't equal, better. Like, it's not that simple, right? I felt like this is a more nuanced take on it. There's upsides, downsides, and
Yeah.
a lot of that is dependent upon like where you're planting them, and then you've got this whole thing about carbon credits and people planting trees, and this
Mm-mm.
idea that, well, you just pop that tree in somewhere, and now I can do what I want in terms of generating carbon emissions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is we've got to plant the trees and reduce the emissions. As soon as you've got
Mm-hmm.
to trade off between the other, it will just reduce the imperative to cut the emissions. And trees can take up carbon, but they can only do it once. But if you're burning fossil fuels year on year on year to generate energy, that is putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And there's only so much that trees can take up with the best will in the world. So we've got to do both. The problem with those financial systems that like to trade off and buy carbon credits, they are in danger, unless they're really carefully organized, they're in danger of actually postponing the moment where we really grasp the nettle. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a relative optimist. I think that technology is moving on sufficiently that it doesn't make so much sense to burn fossil fuels in a lot of circumstances now.
Right.
So we're
Right.
getting wise to that. So I do think we can do it, and that it's not an environmental killer. But we got to plant the trees as well, partly because it'll give us time, and partly because it'll produce a better functioning ecosystem for future decades. I think we just kind of need to do it. The other thing, yeah, I think as to where you plant the trees, there's a surprising amount of room, not necessarily for planting, but for allowing trees to regrow. If you look across North America, there's a lot of abandoned farmland, and forest is naturally coming back, and we can encourage that process. As a planet as a whole, we actually have more trees than we had 30 years ago. They're not all in natural forests, as you would say, but we have more
Mm.
trees, and forest restoration is happening, and we need to encourage that. But it's going to happen where forests used to live or where forests can grow now. We don't want to start planting up deserts
Yeah.
on a large scale. Ecologically, you might be able to do some kind of geoengineering effects with the climate. But I'm a great believer in. I sometimes say save the deserts as well as save the forest, because
Yeah.
deserts are ecosystems on their own grounds, and arid areas of the planet are really kind of important. So we shouldn't see them as just sort of an empty canvas where we're gonna put up trees. The other thing to say is that in an environment like that, trees can actually warm the planet. We know,
Yeah. That's
or at least
fascinating.
there's a decent amount of science which says that if you start planting trees in Arctic regions, you change the reflectivity of the surface of the land so much that you land up heating. If you think of it this way, if you're replacing a dark forest canopy, putting that in where there was snow, well, the snow was reflecting virtually all the sunlight right back into space. It was acting as like a freezer for Arctic regions. Whereas if you put in trees, that's a dark surface and it absorbs solar radiation and emits heat, and you have so that despite the carbon effect, which is more than counterbalancing the carbon effect, you can actually have an overall heating effect if you put trees in Arctic regions. And the same rather applies to deserts. A lot of deserts are very light, sandy, reflective. You get, you can blind yourself in the desert because it's just so reflective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so if you start planting trees there, again, you're having the same effect. You're replacing a very reflective surface with a very dark canopy surface. And there's been research done in Israel where they've done a bit of planting of trees in desert regions on the edge of the Negev desert and so on. And I visit one of these areas in the book
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
their overall effect is actually going to be to warm the planet rather than cool the planet. So you've got to be a little bit careful what you're doing sometimes. And
Yeah.
trees are great, and we want trees in lots and lots of places, but planting them in deserts is probably not a smart move.